2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us.
What is self-acceptance in recovery?
Welcome to the Real Talk Recovery Podcast with the Therapy Brothers.
We're brothers, we're therapists, and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Not much. Things are good. You're coming to us from the desert.
We're coming from Arizona still. You and I both came down we had a really good friend of ours have a son get married down here in Arizona, and you happened to get home in time for Mother's Day dinner with Mom, and I didn't because my plane doesn't fly out till today, which is Monday when we're filming this, recording this.
That's fine. Hey, her favorite son was there, so she's happy.
That's all that really mattered.
Yeah, she got to hug her favorite son. So
you made the effort to get there. So good job, man. Like, way to go, B. It's been a long time coming.
I've worked extremely hard to overtake that. Man,
you really have.
It's been a lifelong battle.
Yeah,
we're just kidding. Anyways, I hope you get home safe, Tyler. Travel safe today. And
thanks, man.
Yeah, you've been traveling a lot, so it's good to see you enjoying life a little bit. So
hey, I'm taking a page out of your book from a couple of years ago when you came to me and said, "Hey, I'm really simplifying my life so that I can enjoy living it." You came to me, and I'm a total workaholic, so I'm still kind of a workaholic, but I am trying to let my hair down a little bit more.
Yeah, it's weird because it's amazing and good and totally uncomfortable. Because it really it's like, man, I should be stressed and working.
Yeah, it really is. It's a different adjustment for sure. That could be a whole episode in and of itself.
It could. But before we get into that episode, we got an awesome guest with us today. So I want to introduce him. Sure. He was with us before, and Tyler, was there something you wanted to say?
No, yeah, I was just going to say, Adam is our caller today. He's been an old guest on the podcast, episode 170. For those of you listening, if you want to go back and listen, I think you're going to hear a difference in even where Adam's at today versus where he was then. We don't even know where we're going to fully go yet in this episode, but Adam also came to the Rising Sun retreat. So we really got to know him on a personal level, got a heart of gold, and really, really grateful that Adam, you're willing to come back on and ask your question with us today.
I am extremely excited to be back with you and honored as always.
Well, awesome, Adam. If you could let's dive into it. So if you could just kind of tell us some of the things you've been learning, or some of the things you've been struggling with since the last time we talked.
Yeah, so quite a few things have transpired since we last talked, and even since the retreat in September, which to put a plug in for you all, that retreat was amazing and exactly what I needed to kind of kickstart what we had discovered in our last discussion was my connection with God. So really was able to kickstart that relationship with Him again there. Being able to just turn myself really fully over to Him. And, one is just having some personal time, but also the connection that I was able to make with all the other men. The thing that I learned from that retreat was that God was going to love me through these other men. And that has been true since that time. So I have been able to stay connected to most everyone from the retreat. We talk to many of them on a daily basis. And it was interesting this last week, things were pretty difficult for me. It actually kind of got a little kickstart, a little smack on the head from God that said, "Why are you ignoring the men that I put in your life?" So that was kind of even a reminder. I would still find myself kind of giving into the shame of, working through this recovery process. And God reminding me about how He was going to love me through the process. So that was the biggest thing that I learned was, how He was going to guide and love me through this process, which has come to be true. So that's really helped me in getting into recovery, knowing that God is going to love me through the process, regardless of, how clean or messy the situation is. But since since the retreat also, my wife and I have been through quite a bit. We've been through, separation. A couple different times actually. And then it right now has led to most likely headed to divorce. Sorry.
It's okay, Adam.
So that's where we're at from a relationship standpoint. The other piece is, in February, my father passed away. So I've also been, kind of dealing and processing that, and more of trying to be in a supportive role for my mother. She, goes through the grieving period and things like that, just trying to be there and understand, and have obviously a lot of understanding for what she's going through. So that's kind of where we're at, from a divorce standpoint. It essentially got to a place where it felt like that I'm really the only one, working on the recovery, and that the expectation, that was the expectation, that, it could be fixed if I fix myself. So, which, I take accountability for that. I know that there are lots of things that I need to change. And so throughout this process, since our last episode, it has been a lot of trying to deal with shame, trying to really rediscover or the parts of me that I thought weren't good, but really are good about myself. And I don't need to throw them out in this process. I just need to have the right intent. And so it's been an up and down battle for me right now with, shame, resiliency, in this process of, as I continue to head through the recovery process, how to continue to maintain the shame resiliency and put, the priority over recovering myself and being okay that, I am a person that does like to do things for people, that, I like to serve those around me and do nice things. And, I recognize that before I was using those as validation for myself to feel good. And now I realize that that's still a good part of me, but I do it because I choose to do it. And that's what I want. Not because I need somebody to, pat me on the back or tell me that I'm an amazing person or that I'm being seen as, doing all the right things or recovering in the right way. That has been another thing that, I've had to kind of work through in this process of recovery is being okay with the way that I'm going about doing it. And, you guys did an episode last week about triggers and relapse that was very helpful, in, surfing the emotions and finding that community, which, I really feel like I'm doing a much better job with that than I was before. The piece that I'm trying to discover now is what am I passionate about? What do I want to, become really good at in that whole discussion? But, for me, just still want to figure out the best ways to continue to be, because shame does pop up quite a bit for me. That's a big still. And sitting with that and being okay that, and not saying that I'm a bad person or that, but more of I'm just working the process. And in that process, mistakes are going to be made. And, some are going to be good, some are going to be bad, but it's a learning process. And, having that, as you guys point out, the growth mindset in this process. So, but when you go through the divorce portion of it, that the shame creeps up quite a bit.
Adam, it's I just want to point this out before we continue our conversation, that it's interesting to be talking to you where there could be two sides of a coin that are both so like shining so bright right now. One is that the commitment you have towards your own recovery, where you're putting yourself in the realm of developing relationships with those brothers that you found at the retreat and in your other community, like recovery community stuff, where you're finding some level of peace and understanding that you don't have total control over the outcomes of things like your marriage or other things, especially thinking about it from the last episode where you were in such a deep, dark place. Like you can hear that there's definitely like a connection to God. There's hope, there's movement forward, there is growth mindset. At the same time, you've been through it. It's not like that shift happened in you and you found God's love and all of a sudden you're like having this blissful life. You're still in the thick of some really difficult, hard things. And it's crazy how both of those things can coexist at the same time, where you are still wrestling and having a hard time and trying to manage the shame at the same time that you have found a new level of recovery and you're grounded in a different way than you've ever been before. And your description here is actually a really good illustration, I think, to our listeners of what it's like to be in the messy middle of things, where your heart's committed and things still are hard,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that has been the biggest, piece for me, because you tend to think that when you commit yourself to God fully, right? As I feel, I have, and really made him a priority back in my life, and how I relate to him as loving me no matter where I'm at. But still seeing that things just aren't necessarily going the way that I would want them to go. I don't want to have to be where I'm at, but it has been good for me to really understand that this is part of the process. I even while we were sitting here, one of my shames throughout my whole life is that I'm emotional. I'm a very sensitive and emotional person, and it comes from, I know where it comes from. I was when I was a child, was in school, and I'd gone out for one of the class, the secretary or something for our elementary school. And I got up there in front of the whole school, and I was so afraid I cried in front of the whole school. So I defined for myself at that moment that being emotional was a very bad thing for me. Right. And stepping into that now, I'm extremely emotional even now, because that's just who I am. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah. Yep.
It just means that I have a tender heart, which is okay.
It's not just okay. It's awesome.
It's who God created you to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to back up, Adam, and kind of reiterate what Tyler said a little bit. Can you be in great pain and in solid recovery at the same time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's mostly where I feel like I have been, is in pain, but still in recovery, still committed to recovery.
I would say that when somebody really chooses recovery, in many ways, they choose to sit in pain. That sounds really backwards. But, instead of numbing it out, Adam, you're having emotions. What I feel from you is pain. I feel pain about your father's death. I feel pain about your divorce. And you being in that pain doesn't mean that you're not right where you're supposed to be. And doesn't mean that you're doing something bad or that your recovery is not working itself out or anything like that. Like everything Tyler said is true, that where you can absolutely be in pain and be in recovery. And me and my wife, we did a really hard workout last week, and then we Wim Hofed right after that. And so it was like all day long of choosing pain. And I was like, isn't it funny, honey? Like how this is good for us? Like we're supposed to just feel pain all the time. And there's purpose to this pain. We don't know what it is, but there's purpose to it. And if we allow ourselves to feel it, and when you talk about being emotional, what you're saying is, you know what, instead of trying not to feel things, instead of trying to hide my emotions, I'm choosing to feel them and think that it's awesome that I allow myself to feel these things. And I just want to back you up on that, because that is awesome. And allow yourself to feel these things. Allow yourself to go through this grief, Adam, because it's good. It's good. This is all okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And as part of allowing myself to feel intense emotions that I typically hide or would cover up through acting out, I'm still feeling emotions to a degree that I don't think I'm necessarily have been prepared for. And so throughout the process, there has been, relapses here and there, but that having grace for myself at that point to say, I'm allowing myself to do things that I've never done before. I never committed myself to doing. So, I understand that the relapse is going to be a part of that. But as I step out of those moments, the pain of experiencing those emotions and then, go maybe having a relapse, but stepping back and just saying, I understand where that happened. That was an intense emotion and I'm okay with it. Right. I am then become better prepared as that emotion then comes up again.
To deal with it.
Correct. And then I don't have the relapse because of that emotion. So the pain creates that resiliency within yourself for the next time it comes up. Whereas, when you're in your addiction, you're never prepared for the emotion. It hits you every time and you run away and avoid it.
Numb it out.
That's right. So, through this experience of recovery, that has probably been the most enlightening and rewarding portion of it is knowing that I'm feeling and going through experiences that are super intense and continue to be there. But as I go through them, I'm more resilient towards those emotions than I ever was before. Just because I'm allowing not only for myself to feel them, but I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable to a group of men who I know I can go to at any moment and be totally authentic with and vulnerable and tell them exactly where I'm at, which also is another piece of what I didn't have before in trying to, overcome or at that time just get into sobriety, I would say, is where I was trying to get rather than be in recovery.
There's another point to this ability to lean into the pain too that I think is important to illustrate here, Adam, is as difficult as it is, being willing to look at, to be curious with, to lean into the pain that you're going through, whether it's with your divorce or whether it's this memory of being as a child crying on stage in front of the school or whatever else is confronting you, even some of the stuff that maybe you're still making peace with from the last episode we talked about, is that the willingness to lean into that with curiosity also moves you to a place that's more in line with reality of your situation. Where, and I'll give you an example of this, where let's say, and I don't know, I haven't talked to your wife, but gathering from what you're saying, you're coming to realize that you can do all of your recovery work, and at a certain point, you may not still be able to save your marriage on your own, right? That's going to have to be done with God and also with your wife's work and desire, if that's the desire, the way she wants to go, right? But working towards that reality and realizing, you know what? I might not save my marriage. Like, in fact, I don't have control to fully save my marriage. You've come to the reality now, even though it's painful, that you've maybe been taking some things on yourself that actually were beyond your control and were causing you suffering as a result, right? Or this example of, and I love where you're going with this because this is going to get into the shame resiliency stuff we need to talk about a little bit more, but when you're talking about going back to that memory of being on stage as a child and going like, oh, I know that feeling, like, oh, that sucked. And I vowed never to be emotional, or that was a weakness. And now you're looking at it from that perspective with curiosity and compassion. Now, the truth is, the reality is that there's a guy that looks in the mirror and goes, I can like that part of me. Like, I like that I'm emotional. I like, what can I do with that? That's a gift to me. You would never be able to do that without leaning into those painful places with curiosity. Now you're getting into reality. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, because as you were talking about stepping into and accepting that part of me that is a good part. I had told myself that I wasn't a good part of me for such a long time, but now I look at it and realize that because I am tender and emotional in that way, it does allow me to get to a place of patience, understanding, empathy, and kindness, for myself, but also for the people around me, right? And specifically, just the thoughts that I have for, my wife. and my kids in this process. It's it just allows me to, instead of run and feel shame for where we're at, to feel love for them, and that and that comes from because of Tender and my emotions, and so that's how I look at it. Is I can be more patient and not allow myself to get frustrated or hurt as much from the situation, understanding that I'm not the only one going through it, and I can have empathy that they're in pain too, but also to just try to love them the best I can right now, knowing that it's still pretty messy.
Yeah, I think Tyler brings up a good point in that you can't fix everything, and I think a lot of this feeling that you're having now is facing reality. So feeling pain, feeling emotions, realizing that you can't take away your children's pain, you can't fix things for your wife. It just is the things that you've rejected in the past, Adam, like being an emotional guy and just things like that, are actually the assets that are going to get you through this pain. And before, what you try to do is shut that down, act a certain way, be a certain way in order to be lovable. And you were in self-preservation mode and manipulation mode in order to manipulate somebody to love you. And now you're realizing, you know what? I'm going to sit in reality. I am lovable. My wife's in pain. My children are in pain. I'm in pain. And I'm going to use me the way God made me in order to process these things and be there for the people that I love and be there for myself. So much healthier, yet in many ways can be more painful. Right?
Brannon, look at what you're describing though, because I think it does need to be pointed out, like how beautiful it is in some ways when we talk about shame management and shame resilience. Because Adam, that's kind of what you're talking about, that in the past, rejecting all of those parts of yourself would have led you into your shame, which would have taken you out of the ability to see your kids, to see your wife, because you would have been in such self-preservation mode. And now you're asking the question, how do I become more shame resilient? And in reality, some of what you're already doing is shame resilient, because it's allowing you to accept those parts of yourself, which then you described it, allow you to see your children, allow you to see your wife, to love your wife, even as she's choosing to maybe go through a divorce with you. But the only way you can get there is if you are living in a shame resilient place where you're accepting all of those parts of yourselves, maybe even the parts you don't like, but accepting that those are part of what your work is and who you are, and then accepting the things you do want to like. And it allows you to then be connected with other people as a result of the shame resiliency on the inside. Right.
Yeah.
Could I ask you, Adam, like, you listed off a couple of things, and I'm just wondering, like, as you're kind of on this journey yourself, you mentioned being an emotional guy. You mentioned being kind of a kind guy, and you in the recovery thought that meant you were codependent, or that you liked to serve people, and maybe it was done for the wrong reasons. But what are some of the other things that you're being reminded of about yourself, or uncovering about yourself, that you thought were negative things that you're now considering wanting to keep or nurture?
Something that I have kind of gotten away with from anyway has been that, I'm a teacher at heart, meaning I look at it as a person who can listen and hear what people are saying, but then also can step into teaching, guiding, giving my perspective, right? I had gotten, especially over this last 5 years, to a place where I felt like nothing I had no knowledge that I have was important to anyone else, right? That what I had to say or what I had to learn or what I've learned up to this point had no value, right? And so I would step away from having an opinion or being clear about, where my stance was on a certain topic or a certain perspective, because I felt like if I was truthful about how I felt about something, that it may upset somebody, right? That I have that perspective. And so probably the last 5 years or so, I stepped away from being that type of a person. Because previous to that, things like I was a college as a seminary teacher when we lived in El Paso and did that for 4 years, which I loved so much, connecting with those kids and bringing value to them. And I've just totally gotten away from believing that because I had become who I'd become after my son's death, and because of the choices that I was making, right, I told myself I had no more value. And so the recovery is that person. I love to teach. I love to connect with people in that way and feel like I have a great, life story, as well as perspective to offer people that can offer understanding and perspective to them, and can show them love and support. So that was another piece of myself that I've let go, and just believed that I had no more value to add there.
You mentioned earlier that in the episode that you're trying to find your passion, and just watching your body language and hearing you talk, I got this image in my mind of Simba after his dad dies in The Lion King, and he gets told the lies and he runs off into the wilderness and basically, in essence, puts his candle under a bushel and hides it for a while before he's finally called back into who his true identity is, and to go back to Pride Rock and be the one true king, so to speak. And in a certain sense, Adam, I feel like I'm witnessing that right now as you're speaking this, that, you let your shame take you out of a piece of you who God designed you to be. And that might scratch that itch of that passion because of who you are in God's eyes. And maybe part of the direction that you have in front of you is to figure out, maybe you're not going to go be a seminary teacher again or something, but just because of what happened in your life and the decisions you made, it didn't take away the fact that that's who you are in God's eyes. And you might need to be putting yourself back into the arena of developing or finding opportunities to be a teacher, whether that's in formal or informal ways, and to get that passion going again and to get that identity, piece of you being kind of nurtured again.
Well, this has been for me, an interesting, just a way to see how God has stepped into my life to teach me that again through the community of men that have surrounded me, and that we've surrounded ourselves with since that retreat. I have split off and created and been a part, and I'm a part of other groups as well. One that's specifically focused on the John Eldredge book, Wild at Heart. We've split off and started a group just based on that, right? And and then the group from the retreat. So what God has told me is, and what I see as I interact with these men and talk about my learning experience and give my perspective and thoughts and guidance and all that type of stuff. This is where God had said, through other men, you will feel my love. And I'm also saying, he's saying, you have value in being a teacher. What you have and what you've learned has value and can help other people. And I've seen that through, the groups that I'm involved in. One, that they love me, and two, that I can bring value to them, and in their lives. So it's it's been a very, wonderful and beautiful thing to see happen over the last 6 months or so.
If you think about the flip side of this shame lie that tells you to shut it down and don't be a teacher, or don't put yourself out there, you're not worthy to. The flip side of this lie is that in order for me to be a teacher, to lead people, to help people, I need to be perfect. And so when I'm perfect, then I'll show up. And who wants to listen to the perfect guy? who wants to listen to the guy with life experience, who's been in the trenches, who has gotten to know God in the hard stuff like that? That's real. That you can connect to that, versus that guy who's played it so safe in his life and never had any life experience. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Satan has told you to shut it down because you're unworthy. And maybe all these experiences is God's way of calling you up and calling you out, which is a very different way to look at this, right, Adam?
Yeah. Well, one of the things more of calling me up, the last episode of The Chosen with Peter, and walking on the water and all that type of stuff. When I watched that, at that moment, God told me, I'm not pulling you out of the water, but I'm pulling you out of the shadows, right? You've hid yourself in the shadows for so long, right? Hiding and believing that just because you're in the midst of something terrible or making bad choices, that you're just going to stay hidden. What I realized from that is God has reached right into the shadows and pulled me right out.
Yep.
And says, no matter where you're at, you have value and things that, to offer people and to offer yourself. Right. And that has been the biggest thing in the shame portion of my life, because that's what I've told myself. Well, I'm not doing everything right, so I have no value. Right. I've just got to stay quiet and stay, don't make a lot of noise. Don't say my opinion, because I might be exposed for being a fraud because I'm in the middle of, this, or acting out this way, or in the midst of my addiction or whatever. And it's been a way for, the adversary to keep me at bay.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning now is I can be at any point in my life, and I can bring value and understanding and perspective. And I was looking forward to our call today because it's still really messy. And I want people to know that you can still believe in yourself and it still be messy as hell. I mean, not just, oh, this is really hard. My wife's mad at me today. This is really hard. She doesn't want anything to do with me. So.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tyler.
You go ahead, Brannon.
Well, I was just going to say, I went to Jim Gaffigan a couple years ago, and he's interesting, Adam, because one of his jokes was this was his whole joke. I don't tuck my shirt in because I'm fat. That was his joke. And the crowd goes wild, laughing at him, right? And it's interesting to me. I'm watching him, and he's pretty self-deprecating, and he uses that for humor and stuff. But one thing about him is people enjoy listening to him because they can connect to him, because he's real about real life, about things. And it's, is that real vulnerability and authenticity? It's a thing that he's putting on. But the point that I'm trying to make here, Adam, is through our blemish and through our struggles is where people can really connect and see us. And that's an opportunity. Like your experience with these men, the reason why you're having such a good experience with them is because you get real with each other. Mm-hmm. You get real about your struggles. You're not showing up perfect. That's why you're connecting to them. And I think you're learning that lesson. It seems like you're really grasping it, right?
Yes. More than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Right. And I grew up in a family of 8 boys. right? And so you would think, hey, boys, we can connect. I've spent a lot of time not really reaching out and connecting, with my own brothers. We could get together at any moment, be totally cool with each other. We probably, we could not talk for 2 years and get back together and everything would be great. So we're not ever mad at each other, but that is another portion of myself that I've stepped into, is really reaching out and trying to even connect with my own brothers, because that's what I desire. And I know how wonderful of an experience it is to rely on brothers, your family, other men, for support. It's such a lie that society tells us a little bit, that we can't love men in a way that is intimate and personal. We've got to love men tough, and we go and, I don't know, climb a mountain together, and that's amazing, which is awesome, and you do connect. But it's even more powerful when you're sharing intimate vulnerabilities with other men, and they just tell you that they just love you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Adam, I want to maybe just kind of get to your question a little bit from the very beginning, and I want to point out a few things, because your question was, in essence, how do I kind of accept the reality of who I am, and including the things that I thought were bad, but now I'm realizing were very good. And I want to point out first what I think you're doing right already, and then maybe one or two things that might be additional things that could help you. Okay. It's beautiful what you just said. I want to start there. It's one thing to go to, say, an essay meeting or a 12-step meeting and sit and take your turn for 3 minutes in your circle every week and then leave and go home. It's a totally different thing to call up your group of men who you've cultivated a relationship with, who will love you through the thick and thin of it all, who will celebrate with you on your victories and will be there as a landing spot on your weaknesses or your failures or your struggles. It takes work to develop that, but you've got that going for you right now, and you've accepted that. So that's one. Two, you've accepted, your heart has finally shifted and opened to the fact that God wants to love you. And you're finding evidence of God's love for you in all of the ways that you're living. And that's allowing you to take a look at these things that you thought were weaknesses with curiosity. So you've got your team of men, you've got the love of God, you've got curiosity. You're meeting those parts of you with what it sounds like some compassion when you find those parts that have been hurt or wounded. And that's allowing you to then become more acceptant of those parts of you, at least the parts you want to still hold on to, and also go to work on the parts that you still want to chip away at with a growth mindset, right? So you're doing a lot of what we would call shame resilient things already. Like that's kind of what's already on the table there. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then what are the next steps to what you're already on? You're already on the right journey now. It sounds like you've got the right forward mindset. You're trying to stay growth minded. You're still hitting these bumps where, your divorce probably knocks you off your feet and puts you into shame sometimes. Yeah. A lot of these other things probably put you into shame sometimes. What would be the next couple of steps to add to what you're already doing that would increase the self-acceptance and shame resiliency?
I want these changes that I've made now to lead into not only strong recovery, but, sustained sobriety, right? So I don't want to continue to be knocked off because there's a really hard emotion that I haven't anticipated, or a scenario that I haven't anticipated. I don't want it to knock me off the sobriety portion of what I'm trying to do as well. Recovery, my community, believing that God loves me in any circumstance has been an important piece. but I still find myself getting, knocked off the sobriety wagon, I guess you want to say, because I'm, being faced with an intense emotion or situation that I'm not prepared for.
Yeah. Okay.
That's probably the next biggest step for me. I want to be able to look back and be able to say, I have a year of sobriety as well as great recovery.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, but you identified that sobriety won't necessarily come through white knuckling, even though sometimes that's the case. But what you're identifying is that in addition to what you're doing already, which is all really good stuff, and actually, I think long-term it's going to help your sobriety no matter what, you maybe also be looking specifically at there's a couple thoughts I'm having. One is some specific kinds of emotion regulation skills that still need to be developed until they become habitual. Stuff like the ones you referenced from the episode you just listened to, the ride the wave skill, phone calls. There's a whole bunch of other things too, but like learning how to trust yourself, become more aware of your own emotions. Even though there's certain things you haven't experienced yet, we can boil emotions down to just a few core emotions. And if I learn how to be intimate with each of those emotions and trust myself that I can manage those emotions, it doesn't matter what the conditions are that bring them on anymore. I can still use the same skills to manage those emotions. And so some core emotion regulation skills that would be one place to put some of your time and energy into, in addition to the stuff you're already doing that are becoming more and more habits. The other thing that I think, and you started to identify this earlier, that will help in the long term with this, even though it won't seem to have a direct link, is to take those pieces of yourself that you're now finding, that teacher in you, the emotional guy in you, the service-oriented guy in you, and to start stepping yourself even a little bit further off the edge of the cliff into those arenas and cultivating that part of you. Because the more, I believe this, Brannon, you can correct me if you feel differently, but I believe that the more you step more fully authentically into the true identity of who God says you are, the less need you'll have, even with rough emotions, to go check out. And so the more you cultivate those parts of you that you're finding and you nurture them and you take action on them, number one, it takes time away from time to act out, but more importantly, it nurtures the identity inside of you, Adam, that is right there, that just needs to be strengthened.
And to kind of follow up on what you're saying, like yesterday, hard day, right? Mother's Day, did things, stepped in and gave my wife, Mother's Day gift and, told her, but there was no, in my mind, I had hoped that, hey, come over, let's spend, time together, but that didn't happen. So yesterday I left my apartment so that I could just go out and look for opportunities to connect with people and serve people, whether that was take a few bucks out of my wallet and give it to the guy asking for money on the side of the road. Right. And then, I found myself just kind of in a situation to reflect after that, sitting in front of the temple, So, I understand the importance of stepping into those things more often, whereas, I think before just sitting around giving into the kind of the depressed feelings yesterday would have been really no good for me and probably would have eventually, ended up in relapse. But as you said, stepping into those things, even the smallest, just because I gave a guy a couple bucks, people may say, well, that's no big deal. But it was me, like you said, stepping into that portion of myself that God has told me is good, which is I like to serve people. Right? Yeah. I have I have a very charitable heart, and to be okay offering that up however I can. Sometimes that's with phone calls, reaching out to my group on Marco Polo, or going out and serving people, directly. So you're right. One of the other thoughts that came to me is, I think setting bottom lines. I haven't necessarily done it officially. I think maybe another piece of all of this that would keep me from, the relapse portion of it. So, I think that's an important part to help, at least I think, to help the shame not overtake me.
Absolutely.
I think, Adam, we're running out of time, but just to kind of wrap this a little bit, I would say in a lot of ways, stay the course. You're doing a lot of good, deep recovery work stuff. With the Wild at Heart work you're doing, with the connecting to the guys, discovering who you are, self-acceptance. Where I would focus is two things. I would focus on fully grieving the loss of your addiction. And like, there might be a part of you that's hanging on to it a little bit. And that's why you're not setting bottom lines. And like, and then the other thing that I'd focus on is emotion regulation skills, is like really practicing some of those tools and those skills in order to deal with your emotions. So as you deal with those emotions, as you set up your relapse prevention plan, the sobriety will come into play, but you really have to get yourself to a place where you want that, like fully. You can say that you want that, but to fully say, I want to be done with this. And, but other than that, Adam, you're doing awesome. Like, I hope you can see that. The progress that Tyler and I have seen just from the first time that we met you, you're absolutely moving forward. And so do a lot of the things that you're doing, but you need to tweak just a few things. Is what I see.
Yeah. Adam, I know we're out of time, and for our listeners here, this has been a great episode just to kind of hear the heart of someone who's actively working recovery. For those listeners who found some value in this, please reach out, share it with other people. If you know other people who are in similar situations, please share it. But Adam, I just want to end with this and just tell you that I think I speak for Brannon too when I say this, that these kinds of conversations are what make Brannon and I's job the best job in the world. To be able to talk with someone who's actively engaged in the most impressive war that anyone would ever fight, which is the war for their own heart. And to be a witness to that and to see it and to have you put it up front and center is a gift to both Brannon and I. And Adam, I just want you to know that Brannon and I we love you. And we're really grateful to know you. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Just so you guys know, you're as a bit of a superstars in my own life. So, but don't get big heads because of it.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? I mean, the great thing is I feel a lot of love for both of you too. I mean, it's just, you know, we've certainly connected differently, you know, and met each other. But I mean, you guys have been a super important part of who I'm becoming, and I just want you to know I love you for it. So
Thanks,
thank
man.
you.
Thanks.
Feelings are
Adam.
mutual.
Yeah. Adam, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being vulnerable. Please don't be a stranger. And we'd love to have you back in the future again, check in. If this was helpful for anybody, please share it. You can leave a review and thank Adam over there, and talk to you guys later. We'll see you.